Hello and welcome to the Book by Book, a podcast about the odd book or two you've read. I'm your host Scott, and I'm not alone. Tobie's here too. This episode we're talking about Stephen King's The Shining. It's going to be a pretty spoiler-heavy episode, but if that's okay with you, continue on, and I'll see you on the other side. It's pretty famous. I would say it's his most famous novel. And that might be due to how iconic the film is, but it's very attached to him. People know that film came from the book.
Yeah. The two, when I was trying to write thoughts and things like this for this episode, the two blur so much, the film and the book.
Right.
And it's like, that didn't happen in the film, but that did happen. What? And you just, it blurs very easily to...
Yeah, and I think we can come back on this after we've gone through it, but that is definitely something to consider with this, is that the film is probably more seen than the book is read.
Yes.
And,
completely agree.
And you've also read and seen the sequel.
Yes.
Also has to blur even more what happened between the book and the film.
The ending is the ending's the thing that makes the sequel difficult. If you go from the film to the book or the book to the film, because the ending's very different, the two, but we'll talk about that.
Right. What do you know about his inspiration for the book before we get into the plot?
Okay, so my understanding is that he started writing a story called Dark Shine, which is about a boy with psychic powers and his family isolated and facing off against an evil. And the original story, Dark Shine, was written and set in a theme park. But he was really struggling to make it work, because he said that whenever you're trying to isolate people in a theme park, it's really difficult, because all they've got to do is come out of where they are and go next door and ask for help.
Right.
It wasn't working, so he stalled it, parked it, put it in the background, and was having by the sounds of it, struggling with a little bit of writer's block. So he decided to take Tabitha, his wife, on holiday, and they went and stayed by recommendation in a hotel that was an hour away called the Stanley Hotel. And they arrived at the hotel as everybody else was leaving, because it was the day before the end of season and the hotel was going to close. And he spent some time in the hotel with his wife, and then they went to bed, and then he was struggling to sleep, got some inspiration, got up and went for a walk. And while he was walking around the hotel, he found the bar downstairs, and it was like closing down, but there's still people in there from a ball or something like that. They were serving alcohol. At the time, he was drinking steadily. He wasn't in his full throes of alcoholism, but it was well on his way, and it was worrying him.
Okay, that is interesting, because that is a heavy theme of the book.
So it's playing on his mind when he writes this. It's like it's almost an extension of his own fears of what he will become if he continues down the spiraling staircase that he was. And that proved to be the case, because a few years later, maybe 10 years later, they staged an intervention and he became sober and has been ever since.
That is very interesting. It's pretty well documented, his struggles of alcoholism. I kind of assumed it was before he essentially wrote The Shining because of how it deals with that. It seemed like it was something that he'd come out of. So that's pretty interesting that he was not past the worst of it, I guess.
Yeah, basically. So then he took the best bits of Dark Shine and combined it with the walk around the hotel. He remembers passing a fire hose, which features heavily in the book, just not so much in the film. He was staying in room 217, which was the original room number in the book, but in the film became 237, and that was to the behest of the hotel management, because they didn't want people being scared to stay in a room.
That is a real thing. Is it 13 is an unlucky number? Yeah, when I've worked in hotels before, and they do not have a room 13.
Yeah. So he started. He reworked it under the working title called the Shine, because of the kids' powers, and that's what he ended up calling
Right.
sort of.
I have seen a picture of the hotel he stayed in.
Mm-hmm.
It is grand. I guess when you hear it for me and someone says hotel, I kind of think of a small city one.
Right.
I guess picturing this, I can see exactly where the inspiration came from. But it does look like an outpost halfway up a mountain. And the fact it was closing for season is tantamount to how isolated it was.
Exactly, yeah. He remembers going into the bathroom after coming back from his walk and seeing the bath, and the shower curtain was pulled across, which is another famous scene in the book. But the bath had clawed feet.
Oh, okay.
and he remembers thinking, I wonder if somebody died in that bath. So that's kind of what I know about the history of the writing of it.
Do you want to talk us through the plot?
So the book is about a family of Torrances. Danny, who is the kid, Wendy, who is the wife, and Jack, who is the husband. Jack is an alcoholic. He's just recently lost his job at a prep school where he's working because he manhandled a student in anger. So he's sacked from there, and he decides to take his family to act as the caretaker for the winter of a hotel called the Overlook Hotel. And his hope that this will bring his family back together because they've been talking about divorce. And he's basically a recovered alcoholic to the point where in the past he tried to reprimand his son and ended up breaking his arm due to anger issues and drink issues. That brought a bit of intervention from Wendy, who this needs to stop, otherwise we're leaving. So he stops, becomes sober, and then he takes his family up to the Overlook Hotel. And then while he's in the Overlook Hotel, the family become cut off from the rest of the world because of the snowstorms, and that was always going to be a thing that was happening. And the Overlook Hotel tries to consume his son because his son has psychic powers known as the Shine. And so the Overlook Hotel tries to consume his son and the powers his son's control through manipulation of the dad, who has a weaker disposition and is easier controlled because of his previous addictions and fights with emotional.
Right. What is The Shining like at this stage? What do we understand about it?
So the Shining is a psychic ability that enables you to telepathically talk with other people that have the shine. It enables you to hear the thoughts of other people, not necessarily if they've got the shine, but just pick up. It's like a empathic abilities. You can feelings, thoughts, and the ability to talk over distances. It also manifests itself in a sort of physical nature, because I vaguely remember there's like a scream and things can smash or something like that, or it has an effect in
the
environment around if it's powerful enough. And Danny is really strong and holds an awful lot of this shine.
Right, but he is about 7 or 8.
Yeah, he's
quite comprehend it. If
no. Yeah, and there's a caretaker that also has a dabble of it in the book.
Right, I think throughout
he introduces Danny and tells him about it.
Yeah, we meet a few people who have a hint of it throughout. Nerves, but Halloran.
Yeah, Hall Oran.
He's pretty well traversed on it.
Yeah, he's been doing it for 60 years. He's had it for 60 years, and he's watched it manifest itself in loads of people.
He can bluntly speak to Danny about it, and he kind of gives us an explaining of what it is. And how, at least at the beginning, it's kind of a helpful tool, but it's kind of harmless.
Mm-hmm.
For Danny, it kind of manifests as what they call an imaginary friend, which is Tony, who gives him warnings.
Mm-hmm.
Quite early on, he has a dream stroke manifestation of red rum, of Tony telling him to beware of red rum. But no one understands what that is.
Yeah.
And his parents don't know about The Shining, right? They know he's a little odd, and he's always been, I guess they put it down to him just being astute and smart.
Mm-hmm.
But secretly, especially Wendy, knows there's something a bit more, but just hands it off because they've got more going on.
Yeah, exactly that.
Right.
And then, so Jack slowly slips into control of the hotel and becomes a bit bonkers, loses
Right.
the plot more and more, descends into madness. The Overlook tells him to kill his family. Yeah, basically they instruct him to kill his family, and he tries to do that to stop them getting away.
Yeah. So I guess the hotel wants Danny,
Mm-hmm.
and slowly throughout the book, the manifestations are just becoming stronger.
Mm-hmm.
It starts off with there is a hedge, and it is full of animals.
Yes, the
And Jack
Tobie.
has to trim them as much as he can before winter sets in. And in
Yeah.
the corner of his eye, they're always kind of moving, but he can never catch them. And he kind of blinks it out as just him not paying attention. And throughout the book, they're more and more coming to life.
Yes. There's definitely more emotion in them. It's almost like they're walking across the lawn, if I remember rightly, towards
Right.
March.
Hmm.
There's a really good bit in the book where he gets caught out there with them, and they almost get Danny. That was really scary, if I remember rightly, reading that.
Right. And I guess of importance for the finale is that the reason there needs to be a caretaker more than anything is that there is a pressure boiler.
Yeah, in the basement.
Monitor, because it will blow if you leave it to its own devices.
If you let the pressure build up, it'll explode.
Right.
That's the thing that Danny uses to get away in the climax of the film. So
Right.
he reminds his father that the thing he's forgotten to do is to reset the boiler. So he legs it off, and then Danny gets out with his mum.
That's kind of the structured plot of it.
Yeah.
We do have Halloran coming back. Early on in the beginning, he asked Danny to experiment by talking to him in his mind, and he just knocks Halloran out. It's so strong.
Yeah.
So he kind of says, if you're ever in trouble,
Give me
just call me, and I could probably hear you wherever I am.
Yeah, exactly.
Halloran knows about the hotel, but he doesn't think it's dangerous because he does say, close your eyes. No, it's not real. There are things here, but none of them can hurt you.
Yes, and he's wrong in that.
Slowly but surely, they start to physically take effect. Danny is quite often just grabbed by things.
Mm-hmm.
There is he's pulled into a room.
Yeah.
Get the significance of the room. To put it bluntly, there's just been a horrendous death there.
Yeah.
We are given explanations, the backstory of the hotel. Jack finds articles and I believe a diary of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, down in the basement. And apparently the Overlook deliberately feeds this material to create his obsession, to, stimulate.
He slowly starts letting go of the play he's supposed to be writing and decides he wants to write a book on the hotel.
The history of the hotel and all the evil that happened there.
He slips in and out of anger, and he calls up the boss to tell him he's going to write the book, and they just instantly argue.
Yeah, that's right. There's a whole bit.
He kind of hangs up, and he has no idea why he just got so aggressive.
Yeah,
kind of wanted to teach the guy a lesson. We know who this guy is from the beginning chapter. He interviews him, and I guess he just brings up all of Jack's past, which throws Jack. He talks about his criminal record and his alcoholism, but he lets him have the job, basically saying, "We've run out of time for anyone else."
Yeah. Well, he got the job by the time he gets up there, hasn't he? It's in the film that he goes up for the interview. In the book, he's already got the job and he's being shown around.
Yeah. I guess it's more the intro. Like he's just arriving on day one.
Yeah. I think, he goes up, meets the people. I don't know if he goes up with his family or he goes up, meets them, then goes back.
He's on his own to start with in the book. I guess this is one of the early inclinations of something's not right. Is that Jack gets rid of a wasp's nest? He sort of bug bombs a wasp's nest.
Yeah.
And once it's sort of finished with, he kind of gives it to Danny as not a toy, but just a curiosity thing to have.
Yeah.
And later on, wasps just pour out of it.
Yeah.
And they're kind of attacked.
Wendy blames him for it, doesn't she?
Yeah, we haven't really talked about Wendy.
No.
We probably should have. She kind of, between the three of them, they each I guess four, including Halloran,
Yeah.
they each kind of take a spot at centre stage.
Yes, definitely.
Wendy is his kind of long-suffering wife. There's some detail about why they have to be there, because they do have a chance to leave the hotel, and that's so it's a little slower than the movie. They're not instantly snowed in.
No, they're not.
They are back and forth into town while the roads are open.
Yeah.
There is a lot of disapproval in the past of Wendy's mother and Jack.
Mm-hmm.
The only option to leave the hotel would be to stay with her mother. And
Yeah.
Danny, knowing how people feel about things, not just intuitively, but because of The Shining, says, no, we have to stay here. You won't be happy. And he kind of wants to make his dad happy. He does love his dad at the best of times. And for me, this is what's heartbreaking about the book, is they do run really nicely as a family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when they work.
Wendy is kind of the heart. I guess she's the care of the family.
Yes.
She has been on the urge of leaving Jack for a long time, but it's just one more chance.
Yeah, as it always is.
I guess the only big difference to the book is that they all survive. Halloran comes to get them, and there is infighting and a climax, but overall they each survive.
Yeah, completely. And in the film, only Wendy and Danny survive.
Danny and his mum survive, right? It ends with them both riding out on the tracks, but Halloran doesn't survive. He gets cast out. Which always, I don't know.
My bone of contention with the film is that the whole Halloran line in the film is pointless.
Yeah, he comes a long way to
the chest almost as he walked in the door.
And this is actually something I would have expected from a Stephen King novel, because we can talk about this when we do the Langoliers. But at least within the film, Halloran does save them, because Jack is at the door with an axe, and he's basically gained entry when Halloran distracts him. And I guess you could say that purpose, even though pretty short, was enough to get her.
Yeah, to give him a chance to get away, as it were.
Right. But I do always feel for him, because he doesn't really know what's going on. As far as he's concerned, he has an inkling something's wrong, turns up and gets an axe immediately without really knowing the origin of the situation.
Like, oh man, come on.
So what are your thoughts on the novel overall?
So I read this when I was living in London. It's the only e-book I've ever read. So it was on my phone, and I read it on the commute into work every day on the tube. I vaguely remember it taking me quite a while, but being extremely gripped every time I read it. There's a couple of times I missed my tube stop and looked up and I found myself in like High Barnet or something like that rather than East Finchley. So I really enjoyed it. I thought it was very, very good. It was different to The Dark Half. It was much more slower paced. There was a lot of periods where there wasn't an awful lot going on. It was just the day-to-day, like the travelling into town, getting food and travelling back, the illnesses, and just like the family dynamic and the drama that's naturally involved in being part of a family. There's a lot of exploration of that. But I found all of those things were really good. It was a very slow build, and punctuated by moments of horror, instability from one of our characters.
Time in establishing, so there's more of a payoff.
I felt really connected to all the characters when I was reading it, and I think that paid off in making the book a lot more very gripping. And on the whole, I really enjoyed reading it. I don't know whether when I read it that necessarily like the themes resonated with me. It was just more of a tale of a haunted hotel and a family that was stuck there. But looking back on it, the way that he talks about some of the themes of alcoholism and addiction and stuff like that, I think he dealt with them quite well and used the hotel as a way to like metaphorically pull those elements out and bring them back to the fore again.
Right, I do. It's strange because we did the Dark Half. It seems like you can kind of draw parallels. It is the same kind of size family. It's almost just a flip where in the Dark Half he is successful,
Mm-hmm.
and in The Shining he is not.
Yeah.
This does have a more, I guess it's post-war. They often talk about the characters knowing each other back in the war, and I think for Jack he gets a lot of chances from certain people
Yeah.
because he fought with them.
There's a lot of parallels between Cujo as well.
Okay, I haven't read that one, but it's on the list.
It's like in Cujo, it's about a dog who is slipping into insanity and trying to stop that fall into insanity, but not being able to stop it because he's rapid. And Jack Torrance is the same. He goes there with the best intentions and tries to fight against this never-ending, inevitable spiral. So the dog tries to fight against this rabid infection.
I mean, that's certainly something I think this book does really well, is letting you feel the drag that Jack is going through.
Mm-hmm. A slow drip.
Yeah, he's kind of, I guess he's dealing with the fact that he's not a good father, but he is a caring father. And there's certain scenes that struck out for me when he realizes that the hotel wants Danny, not him.
Yeah.
And he's kind of offended, and it becomes more ego. And I guess through his play and the book he intends to write, there's, I guess, not necessarily illusions of grandeur, but the feeling that he could just be someone and get something accomplished if the circumstances were right.
Yeah.
But he often feels, I think, hard done by.
Yeah.
The switching of him being caring, and when you're in his head, him really wanting to work things out. There's scenes where he knows he should leave the hotel, and the reasons are to protect his family, but he just gets just instantly distracted just by the smallest thing that pulls him in to
invariably
something that just needs to keep him there, right? And it's quite a tragic path for Jack. More so Wendy, because Wendy kind of stays strong throughout.
Yeah, she is really strong in the book.
And that is quite a slug that poor woman goes through.
Yeah.
And you can kind of see her, wanting the best of her husband as well. That's pretty nicely done.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of conflict because the hotel just keeps hurting Danny. He often ends up with a handprint mark on him.
Yeah, around the throat.
Scratches on him because he broke his arm in a fit of rage. She instantly and obviously, because there's only 3 of them, thinks that he did it.
Yeah.
And despite the logic and him knowing the logic, he feels pretty hard done by it. It sort of flips the switch of his.
Yeah,
but there is a strange moment where, after entering room 217, which is horrific, the description of the lady, the term "swollen belly" with corpse just too much for me. That is a stunning scene, and it's go into detail. He remembers Halloran telling him to close his eyes and know it can't hurt him, and after closing his eyes, feeling the hands on him.
Yeah, that's it.
It's brutal. But so when Danny finally speaks, all he says is, "She did it to me," which Jack kind of becomes smug about.
Yeah.
He's sort of like, so did you do this? Now it's clear I didn't do it. They're just a really rootable family. I feel like you're really rooting for them to come out. I guess at a certain point where Jack's not going to come out of this good. And I don't know if that's knowing his past, that he's already hurt the kid before any kind of influence. We kind of know he's doomed.
Yeah.
Like his only redemption can be in these sorts of books is to sacrifice himself for it. Yeah. So I've gone through it twice now. Once a couple of years, either a year ago, or a couple of years ago, and it's pretty hard to separate from the movie, especially if you're a big fan of it. I've probably seen the movie within my life 10 times or more.
Oh, okay. I've seen the movie a couple of times.
I've seen it a lot. It's when you go into sort of college film studies and you sort of get into those classics, it was certainly something I could just watch, almost just put on as you would an album. So the first time reading it, it was not hard, but it's hard to just let. It was hard to let myself go into the book and say, okay, that's different. Okay,
You saw you read the book after you saw the movie.
Yes, definitely, yeah. Like I only read the book a few years ago,
I can't remember which one came first for me.
for the sake of this review, I've been through the book, a sort of mix of reading it and the audiobook.
Oh, nice.
And I'm really glad we did, because I think I just really appreciate it as a book much more the second time around.
Yeah, because you came into this before deciding to do this, not particularly liking it, if I remember rightly.
Yeah, I think I really liked the opening, and then the history of the hotel. It's kind of interesting, but I never really cared.
Yeah.
I just wanted to get back to the family. And this time around, maybe it doesn't feel that long, but I remember the first time around, it's just instances of horrible things happening in the hotel. And I don't know why they didn't interest me, because if you look at it, it is sprinkled with pretty big chapters about events out of time and out of our characters' lives.
Right, yeah.
And they're pretty stunning. They're vivid. It's just a short story within the grand story of snippets of a club that burnt down. And then when you read what that is, the impact is only to show you that this entity has been around for a long time, and the stuff it's capable of. But those parts are pretty well written, and they draw you in. And even though they're not really adding to our characters, they're really enjoyable. Whereas this time with The Shining, it didn't feel the case.
Right, okay. But that changed on the second viewing, or it's still protagonist?
No, I mean, it's still the least interesting part for me, unless I missed it, because it doesn't really explain why the hotel.
No.
Just that, I guess, like you said, so many things have happened, manifested. It's funny, I remember when I was particularly young, like school young, I guess 12, 13, when the film sort of came out, and I guess older kids were reading it. And it was one of those things that the kids talked about without really having seen or read. Or maybe one kid saw it and was telling everyone, and so everyone was talking about it, even though they hadn't seen it. The simplification when we were young was the hotel was built on an Indian burial ground.
That's right, yeah.
That's not the case. Am I right? I don't believe
anything about that. But maybe,
because that is, I wonder if someone got it mixed up with House or
House is
Poltergeist. Poltergeist is on.
Yeah, Poltergeist was an Indian burial ground.
But this time around, I was a lot more moved. I don't think I was scared particularly. I guess that he does his gruesome very well, like the Dark Half, when he can describe things. The description of the walking corpse in room 217 is horrendous. Again, just it's a pretty short page, but it's one of those ones that he gets a lot done with a little.
Exactly.
The moving scenes between the family just being a family were pretty stunning this time around. I think within the climax, they are in. Jack and Danny are in an attic.
Yeah.
And Jack kind of comes through.
Yes.
Kind of sticks his head out of the mask. And Jack just tells Danny to run.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
It is followed by another horrific incident where he then mangles his own face.
Yeah.
With a hammer. There's this thing throughout the book of, am I right? It's take off your mask or show me your mask.
Yes, it's to do with the red masquerade ball.
Right. But I think that kind of becomes the sort of the metaphor, or almost a switch metaphor at the end, because it's, I guess, is Jack the good guy or is he the bad guy, and which one is the real him?
Yeah,
sort of that. I don't know what I thought of the animals. The
Tobie.
Yes.
Very strange. I found it strange as well at the time. I remember a good section in the book, like that was probably one of the scariest parts, when the snow tunnel falls in on him and he's trapped.
Right. Because the animals come through slowly, and I guess it's the only thing I didn't know, because I knew about the wasps
Yeah.
having not read it, but having heard people talk about it, and I knew about the boiler changes from the book, but this was something that was new to me. I don't know if you're a fan of Shirley Jackson. She's a sort of gothic horror writer. House of Haunted Hill. But I read one fairly recently, and it reminded me of The Shining, which was written long before, which was, I think it's called Bird's Nest. And basically a family are living in a huge mansion, and just a lot of it is set outdoors in a kind of hedge maze.
Right, okay.
And there's visions. So one of the family basically has a vision that the world is going to end and only the people who live in this house will survive. But something about it reminded me of The Shining, which, as I say, because it was written before, I don't know if it's as simple as there are animals cut into the hedge. But I guess there's a feel of something big going on, which is out of the character's grasp.
Yeah.
I know that when the TV show of House of Haunted Hill came out, Stephen King was pretty praiseworthy on it.
Massively. So
I'm guessing he's a huge fan of Shirley Jackson. I know he likes Poe and Lovecraft.
Poe features at the beginning of Stephen King, The Shining.
Okay, right. Yeah. So Stephen King, he quite famously doesn't particularly like the film adaptation. In fact, I have a bit of trivia in that when he got the rights back, it was under the proviso he stopped bad mouthing the film. It's like, I guess he was sick of it. I mean, I wonder if by then he was sick of being asked about it. It seems strange. I can always wonder when an author who's done something classic or an actor, they're going to get asked the same questions to the end of their career. I watched a review on Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah.
And the actor who plays Ben, they said that in the last few years of his life, he would basically give quite stroppy answers because I guess he had nothing new to say about something he did.
As an end of his tether with it.
Right. There's just, anything you asked me, I've probably answered.
Yeah.
And I guess I imagine that can be where King would be now with The Shining.
I think, so Kubrick's film, I think is really good. I think it sets up, it captures so much of the book really, really, really well. But then what it does to the mother, Wendy, her character, the way they change that is bonkers. They take a strong woman in the book that holds like the glue of the family that keeps everybody together, and turn her into this shell of a nervous wreck. And that didn't sit right with me. I always found that really annoying, and still do. Her performance, although it's a really good performance, her as a character and the way that she's brought to the screen she just grates on me.
I guess they give her less to do, but she still does get the same punch points through. Still is the one pushing forward. She still is the one taking control of getting out.
It feels more like she's rolling with the punches than actually she's like reacting to things rather than being preemptive.
Right. I mean, it's a hard watch, the movie, watching her. It's kind of exhausting. You can really feel, I don't know,
she was put through the ringer, wasn't she? On the set.
Yeah, it's quite well documented that Kubrick not nice to her.
I think you could put. I don't know whether this is what you could project what the original thing about alcoholism that the main character is struggling with, and the way that the hotel is the reason he's pushed back into it. In the film, you could almost argue that she's the reason he falls back into it because of her neuroticisms and her just the way that she's almost nagging throughout the whole film, where she doesn't do that in the book.
I don't know. I think I'm still on her side in the film by far. I would say Jack's. Actually, I think Jack's less well done in the film.
Yeah, definitely, completely agree.
Because I guess within the film, you kind of know he's not coming back.
Well, it's bonkers before he gets there, basically, isn't he? Really?
Right, and I don't know if that's kind of
in the car.
And I guess the one last thing about the book is that the hotel wants Danny and he's using Jack.
Yeah.
Whereas in the film, it's not really clear.
No.
Just kind of wants everyone or no one. It just kind of wants to suck everyone in.
Yeah.
I did think it did Isolation better than the book. They arrive in the opening scene, and within the next scene, that's it. There's no going down. They sort of radio in daily. Is there any contact with the outside world?
Yeah.
With the book, I think it's beyond the halfway mark.
Yeah,
They're
before
still going into town. It takes a while for them to.
She takes Danny to the doctors at one point, doesn't she? And then...
Yeah, they're in and out of town a few times.
No, I think the film does the book a really good service, and it does it a disservice at the same time. And I think that Stephen King went and remade it, as we got earlier on.
Have you seen the TV adaptation?
Yeah,
it's good. I mean,
it's very faithful to the book. It's got everything you see that happens in the book happens in the mini series. All the ducks in a row. Everything's correct as it should be from the book.
Does it work?
It does work, but it's nowhere near it's just not Kubrick, is it?
Right.
It's the same guy who directed The Mist.
Film. It's Frank Darabont.
The Stand.
Ah, okay, right. Okay.
Mark Gathasis or something like that.
I'm guessing it came a lot later, right? Because The Stand and the It telefilms are pretty famous, despite how good or not they are. Whereas the Shining TV show, I don't know, it doesn't seem that well known.
No, it's not.
I just tough for the acting.
Like the acting wasn't that great in it. It had Rebecca Gornay as Wendy. The TV series, the mini series, is very faithful to the book, and in that sense, you really get a flavour of what Stephen King was trying to achieve. It would be interesting to see in a couple of years if they try and remake it.
I'm certain they will.
Yeah, possibly. But then you've got the problem with Doctor Sleep just being released.
That is true, and I guess it didn't do that financially well. As far as I know, it's pretty well received.
It's really good.
Records.
I really enjoyed Doctor Sleep, the film.
Yeah, I will have to read that sometime, and we'll have to review it.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, overall, I did really like this book.
More so on the second time round.
Yeah, I think so. I think I could just let go of expectations, I guess, and that's one problem it's always going to have if you grew up with that film.
Yeah.
I think that I read and I watched Alex Garland's The Beach pretty much at the same time.
Okay.
And then years later, watching the film, swearing that I'd seen stuff. That where's the scene where this happens? But it didn't happen. And vice versa in the book, thinking this X, Y, and Z happened. So I guess that's sort of an issue The Shining has in wanting the best of both.
Yeah.
Come through.
Yeah. It's things like The Typewriter, all work, no play makes Jack a dull boy. That doesn't feature in the book. If that's something.
No, the film certainly puts the elevator of blood. I don't believe that's in the book. I might be wrong.
No, it's not in the book. Here's Johnny.
Right. Which I believe is quite famously an ad lib by.
Yes, Jack Nicholson. Yeah.
Why is this better than The Dark Half? When it's kind of similar themes, you know, the pull of success.
I think it's just deeper.
I'm guessing so, yeah, and I guess it takes its time with it. Like, I care a lot more about Wendy than I did, the Stark.
Yeah.
Stark. Yeah. I guess I was surprised by how moving some of the scenes were, just between a family fighting hard to stay together. And fighting a losing battle. Yeah,
it's that inevitability, that desperate against all odds, and those odds are always against you type of thing. Just never going to win. Yeah, it's harrowing. It's the correct word.
Yeah, it's I don't know if this is covered in Doctor Sleep, but one thing I really liked, which you only get a snippet of, is Halloran's backstory. I would really hope one day he can just gets the idea, because he talks about Vietnam, just being in the war and using the Shining here and there. I felt like I could read a whole book on a young Halloran. making his way through the world.
So that would be pretty cool.
That would be cool. I have no idea. I guess it's Hey, we're going to wrap it up around there. I want to thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed. Join us again next episode, and until then, support your local bookstores and have a great day.